All right, so we've got our Captain America and it's all penned out. Now we're going to start doing some coloring in on it. I've gone ahead and sharpened out the charcoal pencils. Now, charcoal pencils do not sharpen very well, so you're not going to get a fine tip like you would with a graphite pencil, but it's good enough for the job that we need to do because a lot of it's through the shading and stuff that we're going to be doing with blending sticks and stuff. Got a new blending stick I'm going to try and use for this one, so it's not all dirtied up yet, just so that I know I get the proper smudging over everything, and then I've got my paint brushes and the charcoal and erasers ready to roll. I'll say another trick on this is I like doing the shadows, but sometimes I can't picture it in my mind. So a shortcut is to go out and find some pictures on the internet that look similar. So here we found this guy that's kind of looking in the same direction. And what we're hoping with this is that he will give us a heads up of kind of where some of these shadows are, like on the cheekbone. I'm looking, Captain America's got this little mark here that's going to be a harder cheek. So he's got kind of the same kind of like chiseled cheek mark going here. And the eyes are kind of in the same direction. So it gives us a little bit of look at where kind of some of the shading and stuff would be. So we're going to kind of use that. I printed off, but I also have it on the computer in case I want to zoom in. And then we found one of Captain America from a video game. The only difference is obviously he has a hard helmet on here, so that's not the same as what we've got because ours looks more cloth-like. So we're going to lose some of this 3D dimension in here. But what I'm going to try and use this for is to be able to look closer at the eyes to try and get some of that shading in. But again, just find some pictures on the side if you can't picture that in your mind, and that should be able to help out with the way some of that shading looks. All right, so with this, we're going to take it in pieces. There's no real way to say where to start. It's kind of whatever you feel comfortable with or feel led to do. For me, I'm going to go ahead and try and knock out at least one of the eyes or some of the eyes with this process, and we're just going to see how it works. I will also say that I kind of cheated it, and I've made a copy of it. So this is not the best paper, but I figure most people aren't going to, when they're coloring with their kids, go out and buy, the super fancy paper and try and do that. You're either going to use what's in the coloring book, or like I said, I made a photocopy, so I'm just using computer print paper. It's not going to make the shading as pretty as what would be on some of that fancy paper, but it's also cheaper, which is what I need to do because we have kids and they get expensive. All right, so with that being said, let's go ahead and start looking at the eyes. So your eyes, you're definitely going to have some different shadings in here. Some of the things are going to be like in these corners and on the top lid, you're going to have a little bit of extra shading. Your irises, you're going to want to make sure you leave this little white spot here and there because the light's going to be hitting it. The pupils are darker on here. But that's going to be okay. We're not going to go ahead and color that in because usually your pupil, you're going to want to have at least one little white spot on there. Again, it's the light kind of reflecting out. As you get in towards the nose, you're going to get a lot darker. And then as you hit the rim, kind of where this dark line is already built into the coloring book, you're going to fade that out. So you got this kind of like eyebrow level here where the eyelid's at. We're going to shade that. And then as we come down here, you've got this little undertone in the eye. It looks a lot better on this guy where you can see kind of underneath the eye, you're still going to have more of a shadow to kind of define out that eyelid. So we're going to kind of look at these pictures as we go, but we're going to take a shot at it and see what we've got going on. All right, now I always go lighter to darker. So if you use a fine charcoal stick like this, that usually is easier to shade. It forms a good base layer. And then we'll come in with the charcoal pencils afterwards and kind of darken that out. So I'm going to start on this eye here on the left just because it's more defined. It's more out in the front. And we're going to go ahead and I'm going to go ahead and do a light shading around everything just kind of get that base layer down. So let's do that real quick. We're doing soft, easy strokes around, nothing too much. I'm going to leave the eye itself white, and we'll come back and play with that later. And then once we get a little bit of it down, I'm just going to take my paintbrush and kind of start doing some swirls and some paint motions to kind of get that to fade in. I'm going to try and get that to do as precise as I can everywhere in there except for the eye itself. If you need to on some of these smaller areas, if you're a little worried, you can start coming in with your little blending stick, little circular motions, and get that in on some of those fine lines. So let me go ahead and finish smudging this around to get this base layer in here. All right, we're starting to look pretty good there. It's a little dark for what his skin tone is going to be for the helmet. So I'm going to go in with our kneaded eraser, which again, all this is you kind of keep fudging it around, moving it. It's good for picking up little spots of charcoal, where if you hit one of these pink erasers, it's a little bit more of a defined line. It's going to pull up a little bit more of the charcoal. I don't want to pull it too much, so I'm going to go ahead and use this. If you get black spots, that means the charcoal's already in there. You just kind of fold it over, press it, mold it until you get one that's not so dark. That means you can go back in and start picking up some of the charcoal. So again, I'm just going to easily brush it over, not going too hard. Once I do that, I'll use my blending stick and my paintbrush just to kind of smooth it back out a little bit, spread what's there. Get in there on all the lines. Get that dark spot right there, kind of make that lighter. Alright, I'll come back in, spread it a little bit more with the paintbrush. Just gives it that little smoother effect going right there. I've got a little dark strip right there, but I think I can turn that into the bottom eyelid, so I'm not too worried about that. Alright, so we've got to start there. Now what we're going to do is I'm going to come in here. I'm going to start laying down my darker layers, which is going to be, let me grab a pencil. I'm going to grab my eraser so it's white and we can see it. So I'm going to go ahead and on the inside of the eye, right here next to the mask, we're going to go ahead and darken that in as much as possible. And then we're going to kind of do a little bit of a softer darkness coming up here on the rim. But I'm going to go ahead and try and get this whole arching area going. So again, we've already laid down our base layer. What I'm going to start doing is coming in with some of the charcoal. Now I've got different pens that are an extra soft, a medium, and a hard. So you're going to want to start with an extra soft or a soft, and then you're going to move to your medium, and your darkest spots you'll eventually do an overlayer with the hard. But I'm going to go ahead and kind of start with a soft, because I know this is going to be a darker layer than what an extra soft would be. And I'm just going to come in here and up against the lines, I'm going to start darkening that in. I'm not going to go all the way because I know this is going to smudge out somewhere like that for right now. And then I'm going to go ahead and you can either again take your paintbrush or your blending stump. I'll start with my paint. Actually, I'm going to go blending stump because this one's going to be a little bit more precise. This is good if you want to like really make sure that that charcoal stays in like an edge, where the paintbrush is better for smoothing it out over a larger surface, kind of getting that gradient effect going. So I'm going to start coloring that in. And then if I come back in with my paintbrush, you'll see if I kind of start moving it, it'll start darkening in the edges a little bit more, smoothing it in. So it's not just such a hard line. There we go. Alright, so we've got that edge starting. I'm going to come over here and look at my actual eyeball. Alright, so it looks like in here, we're going to need this to be dark. That one's not going to be as dark because it's starting to smooth out, so I'm going to paintbrush that in to the other area. Take some of that hardness off. And now let's come back in and see if we can blend that a little bit more so it fits. Alright. Now we're starting to get some of that skin tone color in there. Make sure we get that up there. Alright. Still moving along with my soft. Let's get this little bit of a rim here from the mask. I'm going to actually color in the black line here, and then I'm going to pull it down out of the black line, so again that it looks like it's more of a shadow rather than a hard black, like what's being produced by the actual coloring book image. And that way it kind of looks like, again, what I'm trying to get is the shadow from the shadow here coming in from the light on the mask is going to produce a little bit of a shadow where the mask is over the actual eyeball itself. Alright, so that's getting our shadow mask in there. Now let's go ahead and start working on the actual eye itself. I'm going to start with a medium. And the main reason is I know that even though this is going to be white in here, we know that this little piece in the corner is going to be darker. So I'm going to go ahead and darken that in. And then I'm going to buff that out with my blender. Take a little bit of that off. Kind of push it out here, get that shadow going a little bit better. I don't want to push it into the white too much, because again, it's going to be a shadow on that piece of white, but it's not going to be dark. And if you get a little bit in there, that's where you take one of your pink erasers with a good edge, We're just going to kind of tap that back out. So it's got the little shadow, but it's not super dark on that white piece of the eye. All right, so now we're going to do our top of the eye. Let's go ahead and see what we need there. What am I going to do? Let's go with let's go soft again. I don't want to go quite extra soft. We'll probably do extra soft on the bottom. All right, so the top of the eye here is going to have a little bit because you got your kind of where your brow starts coming off. And then you're going to kind of fade out into this area here. And so again, if we kind of look at what we've got going here, we're trying to take this top part of the eye here that's a little bit darker than what the bottom is going to be. So we're kind of shooting for that. Get some lines in here. Kind of follow where they gave you that natural eyelid mark in the coloring book. All right, we're just going to kind of push that out, blend that in. I want it to get right up along that eye. We might even actually pull some of this down like on the eye. Depending on how that shadow is, we can always go back and kind of buff that out if we need to. Alright, now I'm going to pull a little bit of it up so that it helps form that shadow. There we go. Now I'm just going to kind of take my paintbrush, and while I still got some charcoal on here, we're going to smooth that out a little bit. Alright. Now it's kind of starting to blend in. It's all starting to look a little bit of the same color. So now what I'm going to do is, since we did soft on that, I'm going to come back in with a medium. And just kind of like on some of these overlays that we knew were going to be really dark, I'm going to come back in, lay it down pretty thick. And then let's take our paintbrush and kind of smooth that out so it looks like there's a darker shadow there that's being produced. Because again, we want this inside of the eye to look darker than this outside. Right here is going to always look darker right up against the nose. So we're going to kind of play that with some of this darker charcoal on there. All right. I'm going to take my soft charcoal again. Actually, I'm going to go extra soft on this one, just because a little bit more on the bottom. I'm going to just kind of follow this line that they started giving us. Kind of about right there. Now, extra soft should blend fairly well. So let's go ahead and see if we can get that to kind of make its own little line there around what the eye would be doing. Now my light's coming in so that the shadow is going to be coming in more from the top, so I don't need to really worry about a shadow on the bottom as much. So again here, this picture is a little different. He's actually got like a leather goggle on here, but you can see how that goes from really dark to really light fast, where up here it was more of the shadow gradient. So I'm going to try and leave this bottom rim down here against the edge a little bit lighter. And then we're just going to have a shadow where they gave us that line. So I need to have a definition of a little bit of white there as well. And then hopefully that'll start going. And again, if you kind of get a little darker than you like, that's no problem. You just come back in with your trusty kneaded eraser and kind of buff a little bit of that out. The only thing is, once you kind of get the colors like you're going, if it's a little dark, make sure you buff it out everywhere. And then we take our paintbrush and just smooth it back out. So if you hit any big white blotches off of that, taking that charcoal off, the paintbrush will help smooth that back in there. All right, let me do a little bit in our eye here. Let's see if we can kind of buff that out a little bit. It's a little bit too dark from what I like on the eye, so I'm going to just take a little bit of that edge off. Let's go ahead and get a little bit of a point there. All right, looking pretty good. I'm okay with that. All right, let's go ahead, and the last thing I'm going to do, we've got a little bit of charcoal already on our new blending stub from where we've been spreading things around, moving it around. So I'm going to go ahead and just use that to kind of get the iris going here. That way it gets it a little defined color. He's kind of got lighter blue eyes in the comics and in the movies and stuff. So I don't want to make it too dark. So all I'm going to do is get enough on there that it kind of makes the iris look like that it's different from the white eye. All right. Now on my dot cam, making it look like there's a white line right here. That's not actually there. It's just too much of a intensity for it. Let's see if I can actually zoom in real quick and show you guys. It's having that white line. I don't see the white line on my actual paper. I think that's just a glare from the light. But let's go ahead and take that medium charcoal one more time and try and make sure that there's no defined white lines right there. Go ahead and knock that out. There we go. That's getting rid of that a little bit. And then I'll just paintbrush that down so it smooths it and hopefully doesn't put that white line back in there. All right. So zooming back out, I think we are good with that eyeball. And then we're going to kind of reproduce the second thing on the other eyeball here after a little bit. All right, so that'll be enough for this phase. I'm going to take a break. Hope you guys enjoyed.